Hello, welcome to my lesson. Today we'll be talking about what it means for a chess position to be open or closed. I should preface this by saying that the notion of openness and closedness is supposed to help you to make strategic decisions. It's not really an objective thing. There's not like a precise way of measuring whether it's open or closed. It's more like something that you intuit in the position, something that you feel about the mobility of the pieces and what kind of strategic motifs are important at the moment. So let's talk about first why we call it open and closed and not some other kind of dichotomy. So open implies some kind of freedom. It means that the pieces are going to be mobile. It means there shouldn't be a lot of blockage in the position somehow. And we'll get into how you can figure out those things in a second. And closed, it means that things are blocked. Some areas of the board may be inaccessible to the pieces, or it may take a lot of time to get around the board. So what this really means is that we're talking about the pawn structure when we are talking about openness and closedness. In an open position, the pawn structure should be not determined, or if it is determined, there should be plenty of room to maneuver around the pawn structure with the higher value pieces, like the minor pieces and the major pieces. And in a closed position, it means that the pawn structure is fixed. It doesn't mean that the pawn structure is undetermined necessarily. It just means that the pawns are in a determined position and they're not able to move unless the opponent makes some kind of concession that allows them to move. So we'll see some examples and decide if they're open or closed. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about what this means strategically. If the position is open and the pieces are mobile, it means that you are more likely to see a position where your decision in the next one or two moves could rapidly change the course of the game. Because with so many potential options and so much freedom, it's a little bit easier compared to a closed position to bring your pieces to their optimal attacking positions. You might see some sacrifices to further increase the activity and mobility of the pieces in positions like that. Whereas in closed positions, you will not be able to maneuver your pieces that well, which means that time is not really of the essence anymore. What's more important is whether or not you can place your pieces on their optimal squares. So it'll be more of a maneuvering kind of struggle, and probably sacrifices are only going to occur somewhat rarely, because if you sacrifice in a position like that, you need to be really sure that you are changing the character of the position in your favor, or else those static features of the position are going to dominate and you'll end up feeling just down material, not with compensation. I guess that's another way of saying that it's easier to get compensation for a sacrifice in an open position. Let's start with this position. So if you want, you can pause the video here and decide for yourself, is this an open position or a closed position? It might be difficult to tell because you'll be trying to find ways that you can activate your pieces. By the way, it's black to play, although it doesn't matter whose move it is when you're evaluating the structure. You might be trying to find ways of placing your pieces. But the most important thing is, do your pieces find their best squares? Are they all doing well? Is there harmony among your pieces? And are the things that you want to do in this position things that are more of a dynamic character, or things of more static maneuvering character? And that'll kind of tell you what the structure is. I would characterize this as an open position. Even though only one pair of pawns has been exchanged in this position, there's a lot of freedom in the center. Like black could play d5 or e5 if they wanted to. White could play e5 or f5 on the kingside flank if they wanted to. So the pawn structure is not determined whatsoever. None of the pawns are blocked. They might be unable to advance for tactical reasons at the moment, but until they're actually locked, it's always going to be possible that these pawn breaks could occur. Additionally, the bishops have free reign. In closed positions, typically the bishops are not going to be as mobile. There might be just one bishop that has a lot of mobility, but not both. And the knights will typically dominate in the closed positions because they maneuver very well around the fixed pawn structures. In this position, just for curiosity's sake, black played b5, and this is demonstrating some of the ideas that I mentioned, that they're sacrificing material in order to try to sharpen the play and activate their pieces further. This is from Shishkovsky versus Koprechik. And white chose to take with the bishop. Reason being that if you take with the knight, then Black will throw knight b4, and they're going for some kind of attack on the king. So they took with the bishop, and black played rook fc8, utilizing that open file. And after bishop c4, they played knight b4 anyway, going for some kind of active plan. And after queen e2, there's a sacrifice. So this is a good example of how the character of the play could be in an open position. It doesn't have to be like this, but mobility is one of the main aspects of the strategy, and there can be rapid turnovers in the play. We're just doing a very basic overview of what it's like to play these kinds of positions. So we're not going to get into the weeds too much. Now here's our second position. So you should mull this one over. Again, it's black to play. And decide for yourself, is this an open position or a closed position? What kind of things are both sides aiming for? Are they maneuvering, or are they like sacrificing things, playing actively? Is there a good chance that the game will come to a speedy conclusion? What's your feeling about it? I feel this is a closed position because when I look at the center pawns, and it's most relevant to look at the center pawns when you're deciding openness and closeness, I see they're completely fixed. And the only way that the center pawn structure is going to be wrecked is with a sacrifice, or if black arranges the f5 break, or if white arranges the f4 break. So it's really up to them whether or not they open the position. And this brings me to an important point. Every open position stays open forever. You can't close down an open position. Every closed position has the potential to become open, and in addition, I think there's an obligation at some point to open the position if you want to win the game. So I think it's really important to not just be able to play the slow maneuvering chess like what's happening in this game, but to also be able to play the open positions extremely well. At the very least, you should be able to play that final moment when you transfer the closed position to an open position very well. In this position, black also played b5, but the reaction and consequences were really different. This one is Gelfand versus Campora, and in this position, white did not take en passant. That would lead to an opening of the position. He kept it closed with f3, supporting the center further. And after a few moves, the position became really, really closed. A lot of maneuvering and going on here, not like sacrifices or anything. Some subtle maneuvering. Bringing the pieces to the best squares, exchanging the right pieces. Finally, going after this the only open file. Anyway, the rest of the game is interesting, and you can check it out if you want. This is Gelfand versus Campora. But my main point is, you see how the center is not changing whatsoever? It'll change at a critical moment. For instance, if I go a little further down the line, white eventually plays the move f4, but only at a moment that really favors them strongly. So they had to open up the position at this point, or at least create the potential to open the position. So these are differences between open and closed positions, and it's mostly about how you think about the position. It's not necessarily like an objective criterion that you're looking for here to decide if it's open or closed. It's not like how many pawns are traded, although that does have some influence on how close the position could be. It depends more on, like, are the center pawns fixed? Are the pieces mobile? Is this a maneuvering game, or is this something that's more dynamic? Is it about the here and now, or is it about the long-term strategy? So I hope you liked this video and that this was helpful to you in understanding the difference between open and closed positions. And you can look forward to more content like this in the future. Just stay tuned. Thank you. Take care.